They didn't even believe in us. God did. How do you beat procrastination? So the answer that I found is in this book. Most of us, we got two lives. The actual life that we live and everybody has come from a place where they didn't want to be and gotten to a place where they currently are. Because in business, there are years when nothing happens and there are days when years happen. So these entrepreneurs, there's a point where they're so different that they can't resonate with their old set of friends. But they're not yet sufficiently developed where they've created their new set of friends. And then there's this temptation to go back to like these old patterns and their old ways of thinking. But everybody's trying to grow and there's an incentive for you to stay in the same place because not that many people grow. Most people don't change significantly enough. I mean, they'll make small differences, like little changes. You know, they'll cut their hair, or they'll lose 5 pounds, or they'll grow a beard, or they'll switch from working at one company to like taking a raise at another company. But truly, how many people have you known that have lost 50 pounds, have moved to another country, or have started a business from scratch with no financial or family backing? These are the ones who have genuinely changed the way they see the world and how they interact with it. Because money flows into the hands of people who have higher levels of energy and have lower levels of procrastination.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
And what's the inverse of procrastination? It's energy. And that's because I think a lot of people procrastinate because of one like cardinal character flaw. And that's because they have very low levels of energy. Assalamu alaikum friends, it's Ali Alidina and welcome back to the vlog. And sincerely, if you haven't already done so and you're watching this vlog and you really like this content and want to support me in what I'm doing, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and stick around. Making small talk with somebody you've just met can be absolutely terrifying. Common sense tells us that we need to convince the other person to believe that we're smart. So what we do is we casually drop our job title, our education, or our accomplishments. But it turns out that's exactly the wrong approach because anchoring emotions helps you connect with people instantly. Dale Carnegie, he said that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. And when these students were paired with a partner that was either neutral or asking them for advice, they actually had a higher opinion of the advice seeker. They figured that the person who asked for their advice must be quite clever. In reality, this is because it's flattering to be asked for help. They were smart to ask for my advice because they consider me to be knowledgeable. So here's 3 ways you can approach small talk with perfect strangers and to make it work to your favor. Number 1, ask a lot of questions. In another Harvard study, researchers analyzed people engaged in get-to-know-you chats, as well as in face-to-face speed dating conversations. And in both cases, people felt more warmly towards the people who asked them more questions because the questioners seemed more caring and understanding. And in fact, the researchers concluded that most of us, we don't ask enough questions when we're building a relationship. The key is to ask follow-up questions in response to what the other person says. I mean, this is sales 101. Anytime, if you've ever worked in any kind of a sales position and you've been trained by a top-level sales manager, you will know that your conversation is supposed to recap and then ask questions and continue to drive that conversation forward. It shows that you're truly interested and listening. This doesn't just make you more likable, it makes you more desirable too.
He made you look desirable, which in your case can't hurt, sweetheart.
In the study, speed daters who asked a higher rate of follow-up questions were more likely to be asked back on a second date.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. Everybody stay calm.
Number 2, banish the fear. One of the biggest obstacles to making an approach is anxiety.
Sorry, I can get ahead of myself. I'm anxiety.
You see somebody across the room, you see somebody across the parking lot, you recognize them, you heard about them. how do you approach them? Fear stops us from taking that first step that might lead to a key business contact, a new opportunity, or potentially like a spouse or a lifelong partner. But research suggests that fear is misguided. In one study, executives were instructed to ask advice from someone they had lost touch with years ago, and the executives felt anxious and jittery beforehand.
Wow! Okay!
But when they were interviewed afterward, however, not only did they report getting great advice, 9 out of 10 of them said that the experience was enjoyable and fun. And number 3, don't overstep. Remember that your new acquaintance is not your new best friend. It's very tempting to become very attached to that successful, famous, or experienced person that you just met, because now your level of excitement is taking off.
So excited! So excited!
About what you're learning about them, or maybe what you already know about them. But now isn't the time to ask them to be your mentor, or to ask them open-ended questions that would require them to do research. In fact, asking open-ended questions is something that you could easily answer on Google or ChatGPT is one of the fastest ways for me to stop responding to you. Nor is the time to send them your business plan and start asking them for detailed feedback. Instead, ask specific questions and keep it brief. Be cognizant of their time and don't overstep. The goal of a great first impression is to make sure that you get a second one, and maybe even a long-term contract.
Sign the contract, big boy. Come on, sign the contract.
But in reality, how can you tell if you're built for business? Meaning, are you really CEO material? In order for us to attempt to answer this question, we're gonna approach this by looking at an acronym called HAIR, H-A-I-R. These are 4 things, okay? So H is the helicopter quality.
Helicopter, helicopter.
A is analysis. I is for imagination.
Imagination.
And R is the sense of reality. Let's dig deeper into it. The helicopter quality
Helicopter, helicopter.
means the ability of a person to rise above and see the overview. And the helicopter also comes down to the ground level and looks at all of the details. There are a lot of people who get stuck with details. If you look at my last vlog, I talk about over-analyzing things and overthinking things to a point where you start self-doubting and start doubting the investment. And then what happens is these people are unable to go out and then see things from a higher vantage point. The second one is A for analysis. And this is the ability of a person to break down complex problems into its minute parts. If you can break it down, that's the analytical component. I kind of deal with this in my own life because my son, he's about 12 years old, and he asks me questions about why do I need to answer this? Why do I need to learn this math in school? And what I tell him is that it's not about using that calculus or using that algebra later on in life that's gonna make you so successful. A lot of people have already determined that, oh, all of this complex math that we learn in school doesn't really help us necessarily in the real day-to-day life of business. But what it's teaching the brain is how to break down complex problems into smaller tasks and then break down and answer those smaller problems. And if you can break it down, that's the analytical component. And then after you break it down, how do you integrate it back? That's called analysis, the ability to analyze. The next one is imagination.
Imagination.
This is creativity. How imaginative is a person that is looking at the facts that's able to find the solutions? It could be alternative solutions too. And that's why you gotta use your imagination. Imagination is so important. Lastly, we talked about R, which is the reality, a sense of reality. Some guy who has a lot of imagination, super highly creative, but is totally ungrounded, his idea is probably impractical. So having a sense of reality and being able to implement your idea practically into the framework of society is very important.
Yeah, boy.
Did you know that complaining, judging, or criticizing others can actually change your brain to make you less focused and productive, and in turn decrease your problem-solving skills? I'll tell you the science behind why and how we can actually flip this into a positive at the end. Reason number 1 is that every time you complain or criticize, you strengthen that neural pathway in your brain. This is called Hebb's law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're constantly focused on what you don't like, you're wiring your brain to see more problems. Number 2 is that studies show that chronic stress and negative thinking can actually shrink your prefrontal complex. And this is the part of your brain that's responsible for focus, emotional regulation, and decision making. By stressing things out, you're literally weakening the part of your brain that helps you solve problems while strengthening the pathways that help you point them out. And number 3, well, this is just a fun fact, but research shows that complaining and criticizing actually makes you appear to be less attractive. And finally, complaining and criticizing puts you in a victim mindset, and it takes you out of being the creator that you are. But hey, look, the inverse is also true. Thinking positively and expressing gratitude strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which improves your ability to focus and create the life of your dreams.
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
So train your mind to look for joy and abundance, because you don't necessarily get what you want in life, you get what your brain is wired for. Keep betting on yourself and bet again and again.
Another!
Roll the dice and roll the dice again. What happens as you get older is you realize that these opportunities were in front of you and that you didn't jump on them. Why? Because you were in a bad mood. Or you didn't know who to call, or you were overjudging the people or places involved in the situation. Life can be understood as a series of opportunities that are put before you, but they are timed. I was fortunate enough at the start of exam transport when I got a call from HCA, which is the Hospital Corporation of America. It's a publicly traded company. They wanted me to transport whole human blood from a blood donor collection facility to a hospital. Why do seasoned truck drivers buy existing trucks from existing fleets and fleet owners? This is the same reason why seasoned investors buy existing businesses instead of trying to build one from scratch. Because acquisition can provide built-in cash flow at a faster rate. It'll get you customers, and it'll give you battle-tested symptoms without the pain of a typical startup. So you skip the first 1 to 2 years of the prove it phase and you jump right to revenue. The way that you do this though is really important because it doesn't come with a guarantee of success. In fact, there's a lot of ways to completely screw it up.
Damn, I messed up. We gotta go bald, fam.
And if this sounds like you and you wanna go from truck driver to truck owner, and need help with building your fleet, go ahead and book a call with our team. Let's go ahead and get you on the dial and start explaining it to you, and we can walk you all the way through this entire process. Luxury energy is not YSL bags. It's ruthless boundaries and a bank account. You think luxury is designer bags and airport selfies? That's not luxury, that's just a costume. Real luxury is how unavailable you are to chaos. Real luxury is having so much discipline, so much power, so much internal order that you don't need to flex because your life is a flex.
Nice.
Louis Vuitton bags without boundaries is poverty. A closet full of labels and a calendar filled with low-vibe people is not wealth. That's insecurity wrapped in aesthetics.
You're insecure, you're insecure, you're insecure, you're insecure.
Luxury is waking up knowing that you can buy anything because you've built something that allows you to do so, that no one can take away from you. So stop chasing the look of luxury and build a life that makes you unshakable. Luxury isn't what you wear, it's who and what you refuse to tolerate. So how do millionaires and billionaires use ChatGPT in order to stay ahead? Firstly, you gotta train your ChatGPT to become an AI version of yourself. And here's how you can do it. So number 1, have in-depth conversations with it about your goals, about your pain points, and even your philosophies, your upbringing, and maybe even your religious beliefs. Number 2, you gotta assign it specific roles. Roles like telling ChatGPT when you're prompting it to act as a life coach or act as a marketing consultant. And number 3, continue to refine its responses by asking it to evaluate itself from a different perspective. You gotta do it. You gotta do something where you're little and the universe is large, because that gives you peace and perspective. The second thing is family. Family is a mystical bond, and if you don't have that, you're gonna be in trouble. No. Now, family is not perfect, but preserving those bonds and checking in and keeping in touch will help your own body and your own heart feel regulated. The third is friendship. It's really important that you're not utilitarian about your friendships, meaning that you need to spend the time and do the work to have people who just love you, who are useless to you and you're useless to them. You simply can't buy the kind of happiness that comes from truly intimate or authentic friendships. And last but not least is actually work. And all that matters with work is earning your success, bringing value to your life. Research shows that the amount of money that you make is directly tied to your sense of self-worth. And this might change your life. A study that ran for over 20 years found that people who grew up with higher self-esteem earned significantly more money in their adulthood, even after controlling for things like IQ, education, and background. If you're wondering why, it's because self-worth completely changes how your brain operates. The reticulum activating system of your brain, it filters reality, only letting in what you believe you are worthy of.
I'm still worthy.
So if deep down you think that abundance isn't for you, your brain will literally filter out the people, opportunities, places, and ideas that could expand your wealth. That's not all, because higher self-worth actually boosts dopamine, which will increase your focus, energy, and drive. So when you believe you're worthy of more, you actually go after more. You take bigger risks and you follow through and you stop settling for less. Research shows that low self-worth, on the other hand, can lead to avoidance, self-sabotage, and financial insecurity. When you undervalue yourself, the world undervalues you right back. Bottom line, self-love is not a bunch of BS. It is neuroscience that will help you become more successful in every area of your life. Reprogram your self-worth and your income, and your confidence in reality will rise in order to meet it. That's how you start big movement. Like, that's how you get big results. That's how you build a body of your dreams. That's how you build the business of your dreams. It's small wins every single day with the foundation of consistency. The wise person buys a house, pays it off in full, and tells relatives that it's on a mortgage. They drive a car worth over $100,000 and they tell their neighbors and friends that it's a secondhand purchase. They earn $50,000, $60,000 a month and they tell friends that they only make about $10,000. Why do I mention these things? It's because a person must know how to hide two things: their personal troubles and their successes and their true capabilities. Keep your troubles to yourself, because once they're spoken, they become fodder for other people to discuss. Likewise, keep your abilities and your success under wraps to some extent, because too much talent will certainly provoke jealousy.
No, I can't laugh yet. I've got to hold it in.
And this is specifically for, I would say, like the 15 to 30-ish age group. If you can simply go to bed on time, avoid drinking alcohol, smoking weed, and not get a DUI, and you avoid early pregnancies, you avoid messing up your work because you don't sleep well, because you showed up hungover the next day, this is what leads to the reason why you don't get career advancement. If you go to bed on time, and it's less likely that you'll be in a ridiculous car accident in the middle of the night. There's a lot of these downstream impacts from just one single behavior. You also have better quality of sleep if you just go to sleep at the same time every single day over and over again, regulating your circadian rhythm. And you also have life extension through good sleep behavior. You look younger, and so now 5 years later, 10 years down the road, people are asking you like, wow, what are you doing? You look so young.
Wow! Beautiful!
There's all these things from one central behavior, which is just go to sleep on time. And so if you want the action for this, you actually set your alarm for when you're supposed to go to bed, not necessarily when you're supposed to wake up. If you set your alarm for when you're supposed to go to bed, you wake up naturally at whatever time you wake up. It's super difficult to oversleep when you go to bed at 9 p.m. because you can get 9 hours of sleep and still be up at 6. But that might not work for you. You might need to go to sleep at 6 a.m. and wake up 9, 10 hours later. That's fine if that's what your schedule dictates. Just consistently go to sleep at the same time. Train your body. If the only reason why you want to build a billion-dollar business is for the cash, I think you suffer from problems. Like, that's a false reality. Most people fail, and that is not the easiest way to win, despite what you see all over the internet. You're not really in the entrepreneurial game if you haven't sat with your head in your hands in the darkness of your living room, unsure about what to do next. That's the game of entrepreneurship. It's a game of uncertainty. Missed payroll, people suing you, people hating you, employees leaving you, having fraud committed against you, people stealing from you. It's a miserable sport that some people like myself just can't get enough of. And so you have to actually make sure that you really want to be in this game.
Are you sure about that?
Not just for the cash, but for the pursuit. Yeah, there's huge benefits, massive upside, but only after it's taken its piece of skin off. And that piece of skin is really, really big. So make sure you actually want to do the thing. I'll tell you a psychological truth that you must know. Sigmund Freud said this: the more perfect a person is on the outside, the more demons they have on the inside. Beware of people who seem like too virtuous, who seem too good. They might be hiding something. And on the flip side, the people that you know that are a little bit rough around the edges, someone who's not always the absolute nicest.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
They might be your most loyal person in your desperate times of need. A psychology professor at Johns Hopkins University, his name was Kurt Richter, he put rats inside of water to see how long they would tread before they started drowning. On average, they lasted about, let's say, 15 minutes. But with the second group, just before they gave up, scientists pulled them out of the water. They dried them off, let them recover, and then they dropped them back into the water. After dropping them back in, you might think they lasted maybe, another 15, 20 minutes tops? But they swam for 60 hours. Not 60 minutes, 60 hours, 60 plus hours. But why?
Why?
Because once they had experienced being saved once, they believed that it could happen again. That wasn't endurance that second time around. That was faith. And that's how most people live too. They don't drown from exhaustion. They drown from disbelief. They don't quit because they're weak. They quit because they stop believing that somebody's gonna come or something is gonna come and help them out of their situation. But here's the twist. You're not the rat anymore. You are the one, and faith is the one that pulls you out. So when life gets really heavy, when it feels like you're treading and nothing's changing, remember, your body will go as far as your mind believes it's worth continuing. Don't fall to 15 minutes. You got 60 hours in you, but only if you remember that you're really capable. And once you set up the business, and once you're set up, run your business like Domino's Pizza.
Great Domino's Pizza delivers.
No problem.
Domino's is one of the most valuable brands in the world. Why? Because a 16-year-old can run the restaurant all by themselves. And that's how you want to think about your business. Don't add complexity into it. Strip the complexity away. The biggest shops are the biggest shops because they're not trying to do 100 different things. Pick a lane, keep it simple, and just focus on being the best in your industry at that one thing. And that's how you're gonna crush it.
You did it, sir. I did it. You did it. I did it.
Look, I don't do like mindful meditation. I don't wake up at like 3 a.m. and like tape my mouth shut in the morning. The point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't do anything special. I'm just present. That's it. My secret sauce during my corporate career in investment banking at Wells Fargo and Credit Suisse, it wasn't that I figured out how to be a better banker. It's that I realized that everybody in a corporate job works a 40-hour week and is productive for about 4 hours out of that week. And they basically sit around and like fiddle around doing nothing for the other 36. So I said, I'm gonna work for 40 hours, which means that I technically work 10 times more than everybody else. And when I hire an employee, I nurture them to the highest amount of productivity in the slowest amount of time. So it's not about I need to do overtime this weekend and work every single minute of every single hour just so you can meet your goals. So imagine how much more we can do if we just worked 40 hours, but we're productive during those 40 hours. So I'm never really understaffed because even if I'm missing 1 or 2 employees for the day, the other ones are working way better, more efficiently, properly cross-trained. The blank screen, the empty page, the unfilmed video. Whenever we sit down to start writing or creating anything, we're often paralyzed by something that's stopping us from starting. So the question is, how do you beat procrastination? So the answer that I found is in this book. It's called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. He says that most of us, we got 2 lives. The actual life that we live and the unlived life that's within us. And between these 2 things is what's called resistance. And that is the secret to overcoming procrastination. And there's a lot of life-changing insight here. It changed the way that I approach life and meaningful productivity. And so when diving into the book, point number 1 is know thy enemy.
Enemy spotted.
So the first question we need to ask is why?
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 What is resistance? Resistance is the negative force that's actively working against us to stop us from doing the things that we want to do or that we need to do. It doesn't stop us from like watching Netflix or scrolling on Instagram for hours. Instead, it stops us from doing anything in our lives that it knows in our heart is going to level up our lives. Like resistance isn't really that feeling that we get when we don't want to like clean the dishes or fold our laundry that's already in the dryer. That's like resistance with like a lowercase r. But resistance with the uppercase R, that's the resistance that holds us from doing the larger things, like the creative and entrepreneurial things, or the things that require us to take any amount of risk, or the things that kind of put ourselves out there. And whenever we try to do any of this kind of stuff, we kind of have to go up this hill of procrastination. And going up that hill, that's a constant battle. And there's this point that he makes in the book. He says, we don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to write the symphony. Instead, we say, I'm gonna write the symphony. I'm just going to start it tomorrow. Because you know, right now, the timing's not that right. I don't really have the gear. Why would anyone really care what I have to say?
Who?
A lot of people.
This is all resistance. It's all that procrastination is building within us. But what really fuels resistance is fear. Resistance is activated by fear, and it gains strength whenever we give into that fear. And it creates a vicious cycle that we fall into, which causes the resistance to become even greater as our fear becomes even greater. But as Steven says in the book, fear is actually a really good thing, because when we feel scared about doing something, it usually means we should just do the thing.
Just do it!
Like, I never feel like any resistance sitting down and like scrolling on the internet for an hour on my cell phone, but I do feel resistance when I'm gonna sit down and record these vlogs. And that tells me that sitting down and actually taking the time out and recording these vlogs is the most important thing that I need to do. And the key rule of thumb here, like the key takeaway that I found from Steven Pressfield's book, is that the more resistance you experience, the more important your unmanifested project is to you. So if I feel like resistance or scared to do something, the more likely I am to actually just go ahead and do it, even if it's an ugly start, even if I'm not fully prepared. And so far in my life, I'm not regretting doing the things that I'm scared of, but I do regret not doing the things that I am scared of. So now that we've done step one, which is know thy enemy, and we've defined resistance and we've figured out exactly what that is, we need to figure out some ways of actually dealing with it. And the second key point is to become a professional.
You fellas have nothing to worry about. I'm a professional.
In the book, Pressfield mentions the difference between the professional and the amateur. An amateur takes action whenever inspiration strikes or whenever they're in the mood to do so. They're not really committed, and the goals are really focused on like fun, money, and status. A professional, on the flip side, shapes their life so that the work that needs to be done is a priority. They're determined and committed to succeed. By following their inner drive and creative spirit. And I think it's interesting because he's not really defining the professional as somebody who makes money doing the thing, but instead the professional in Pressfield's definition is somebody who does the thing for the sake of doing it, and he takes pride in the work itself. And there's a few other traits that he describes as the professional, like showing up every single day.
The Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza absolutively.
Regardless if you want to do it or not. Cristiano Ronaldo, he wouldn't just like not show up to soccer practice because he doesn't feel like it. He's a professional. He's decided that he wants to pursue professional soccer, and he's got to show up day after day on the pitch to practice with his teammates. Whether he doesn't feel in the mood or whether he feels in the mood, it doesn't matter. He behaves as a professional. And if you want to be a professional, you have to work through the adversity. And you have to also be open to constructive criticism. Because that's the way you improve. But if you're an amateur, if you write something or create something and you start something and somebody gives you bad feedback or you get a bad comment, you really take it to heart. You're like, oh man, I don't know if I should do this anymore. Whereas if you treat it as a professional, you would be more inclined to actually grow from the negative feedback. A professional as well will understand that fear is just a part of the work. Like if you're an investment banker on Wall Street in New York City and that's your profession, you know that you're going to be stepping outside of your comfort zone when you get onto your first cold call or when you get onto your 1,000th phone call. You know that you're gonna be stepping outside of your comfort zone when you jump on that cold call, or when you get on that sales meeting with a bunch of people from front office when you're currently in the back office. But you approach it with a ton of discipline and a bunch of confidence because you know that it's just a part of the work. Whereas if you approach things from an amateur perspective, like starting a YouTube channel or whatever it is that you want to do, as soon as the going gets tough, you're just gonna fold. And obviously there is some level where you can kind of take these things too far, like being so focused on maybe one of your hobbies, where you start treating it like a professional. So you start doing the hobby for like 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. That becomes a little bit excessive.
Stop it. Get some help.
Doing things in moderation makes sense, but an extreme or too much of anything will help drive you out of that pretty quickly. And there is certainly something to be said about not monetizing all of your hobbies, or at least trying not to make a living out of your hobbies. Because for me, for example, a hobby would be like snowboarding. But if I started making money snowboarding, it might become actually more fun. But if I started doing it every single day, 8 to 10 hours a day, even though I previously considered that to be a hobby, now that I'm getting paid to do it, it'll take all the fun out of it. So treating our creative and entrepreneurial stuff as a professional doesn't mean that it takes over our lives. It just means that we're approaching it with a bit more of a professional mindset, rather than the mindset of like, oh, I'll just do this thing whenever I feel like it. Because that doesn't really work if you're treating something like a pro. And the key point number 3 is to banish the ego. And the way that I see this is that our ego is more focused on external events and how people perceive us or see us. Whereas the self is this inner calm that we have, which is about the way that we see ourselves. When we're led by our ego, our main priority is to maintain the status of I in this world. And we're just focused on how external events affect us, and everything becomes very superficial and surface level. And then we've got the self, which is made up of the individual and collective unconscious areas of our minds, which includes our dreams, intuitions, visions, and aspirations. It encompasses the deepest form of who we are. And when we sit down to create, basically we're attempting to channel the self, because it's through the self that we can be the resistance. When we have a fixed mindset and we get like negative feedback, or we do something that we know is not very good, it really shakes us to the core because it like damages our ego.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
And if we don't have that fixed mindset, but instead we have a growth mindset, it's just part of the process of improving over time. And another way that I think of this is when it comes to goal setting. So for me, I found that I get a lot more like resistance, which is basically procrastination, when I've got goals that are based on outcomes that are outside of my control. That's when I procrastinate so much where I don't even go and do the thing. And now I've realized for basically whatever I do, if I'm struggling with procrastination, it's usually the resistance that's just getting in the way. And usually it's because I have some kind of outcome goal that's associated with doing the thing. Now, we've talked about 3 ways of beating procrastination. Number 1, name thy enemy. Number 2, become an absolute professional. And number 3, banish the ego, as explained in the book, The War of Art. And lastly, my own 2 cents, is banish the emotion. The world of business could care less about your emotions. People that are wildly emotional very rarely have a lot of success around them. They don't have people that are winning around them, and they don't have successful business relationships. The more you use emotion, the less you use logic. And in order for you to build a successful business, X out the emotion and approach things with logic, confidence, inner strength, and absolute unwavering fire in your belly to achieve what you know you are worthy and capable of achieving. Thank you so much for your time, and see you at the top. Peace. They didn't believe in us. God did.